Hey there, welcome back to 16 Stops, a podcast. My name is Josh, and I'm here with Brandon.
What's up?
This is episode 9, and today we're going to talk about NAB 2023. Well, Brandon, we got back from NAB pretty recently. I am absolutely exhausted.
So am I.
Yeah, we had an absolutely outstanding time, and I want to talk a lot about our experience going to NAB. For me, it was the first time. You went last year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Number 2.
our experience, like hanging out with creators and the conference itself and like what's new and that sort of stuff. So to start with some personal news like we usually do, and then do news and rumors.
I think that's acceptable.
Okay, so first of all, I just got
Oh, yeah.
the Canon R8. So this just showed up like an hour before we're recording this. It just got sent out. So
Ooh. The new.
yeah, so hopefully I'm going to go out after we're done recording this and do some testing and stuff, although I don't expect there to be any surprises because it's basically the same as the R6 Mark II, but it's very small and, it's got the RP body, so it's got the really small battery.
Does it feel like just really tiny and super light?
Yeah, it's very light. It has that smaller battery, so it's even lighter, and then it's like really thin.
Does it feel cheap?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty much what I expected. There's really not really a surprise to it. It feels like you're just buying a sensor. Like that's what I feel like you're buying.
Gotcha.
It doesn't have a third exposure control. The back is pretty simple. Anyways, I'll make a first impressions video. So I don't know when that's going to come out versus when this is coming out, but I'm just going to plug this back in to charge it because I got to go out and record it with it later. So anyways, so that's my new news. How's the camera situation for you going with the photography stuff? Q2, X100V. I know you were playing with both at NAB, mostly the Leica, but
It's good. I've got a video coming out on a comparison between the Q2 and the X100V. I will say I've never been stopped so much for a camera. You saw it. Like,
yeah.
Every other person was like, is that a Q2? Is that the Ghost? And I was like, here you go. I remember one person kind of was like, oh man, I don't even want to touch it. And I just threw it at him. And he was like, why are you doing that? But it was
really interesting. It was such a conversation starter. And I feel like no matter who the person was you were talking to, at what booth or what level person they were, like how,
yeah,
like everyone wanted to talk about it and touch it and play with it. So it was really cool to see that.
Yeah. So that comparison video should be coming out pretty soon, next week sometime.
Okay. And I won't spill the beans.
Yeah,
all right.
thank
So for me personally, I picked up a C200, which is kind of a random pickup for me. I want to use it some more before I talk about it at length, but I needed a good studio camera, and they're getting pretty cheap. And
is that what you're filming on now?
That's what I'm filming on today. So
fantastic.
Starting to use it. It's a workhorse. It has XLR, no record limits, obviously. I'm filming at 8-bit. It does 8-bit and 12-bit RAW. So I'll have some more thoughts about it as we go along. But I noticed yesterday on the B&H Deal Zone, they were selling a C200B for $2,000. So it's definitely a viable option out there if you need like a solid workhorse video camera from Canon. And some people, I think, just forget about the older cameras. So I don't know. I'll give you more opinions as I use it more. I have owned this camera before. And before I picked one up, I bought a used one. I looked at some old footage that I had, and it looked awesome. And I was like, why am I not using this camera? So
there you go.
All right. So that's kind of, I think, the rest of our personal news and rumors gear. But let's get on to news and rumors. All right. So first of all, notice how I said that so you could put the graphic in this time, Brandon.
I picked that up, Josh. Nice
Okay.
work, buddy.
Okay. If you missed that last time, there was I forgot to say it like that. And then Brandon was confused because he didn't know where to put the graphics. All right. So we're all good. Okay. So I think some of the biggest news and rumors are, I think we got 2 weeks worth to talk about. We'll try to get through them fairly quickly. The first one is the FX3, FX30 firmware update. And this was a huge deal because Sony has added more stuff to the FX3 and still neglected the A7S3, A1, and all that stuff, which everyone's upset about. We've talked about plenty. We'll go through the updates quickly, but they had support for the Creator app, which is no surprise. That came out with the A7 IV not long ago. A couple other little things, but the big things were they added focus breathing compensation, which is in A7 IV, FX6, and the new ZVE1. They also added support for DCI 4K, which is 4096 by 2160, and also true 24p recording. And they also added anamorphic D-squeeze built into the camera for monitoring. So I think it's a 1.3 and a 2.0, I believe, D-squeeze.
You already updated, correct?
My camera?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just remember you really, really maybe too excited about 1/48 in the back of the car when we were driving somewhere over the weekend. You're like, it's got 48.
So that was actually not in the list of things, but most of you know when you're shooting on mirrorless cameras, other than like Panasonic and I think Fuji, you can't select 1/48. It's always 1/50 if you're shooting at 24 frames per second. So now you can actually use 1/48. And when you're in DCI 4K, you can only record in the SI mode, so you can't record in S or HS. And that's the only place you can get 24p. Like it's 24.00, not 23.98, which most people don't even use anyways, but they added that in there.
Alrighty then.
So I think a lot of people are happy about the anamorphic support, but the reality is everyone knows the Sony screens are terrible. You're not going to monitor that 2x D squeeze. Like you're going to use an external monitor anyways, which will have that built in. So I don't know, whatever.
Good old Sony.
Having DCI is cool for sure. And you can also add a quick button to switch to S and Q mode, so you don't have to go into the menu. So little stuff, but
still no shutter angle or waveform or false color.
None of that. There's no way to close the shutter when the camera turns off. That would probably be my number one thing is I want the shutter to close when the camera turns off. No, it doesn't. So
all right, Sony.
Stuff like that.
They're just spinning the wheel. They have a big wheel. They're like the list of updates that they're like, you get 3 spins. Okay, we get that. We get true 24p DCI and whatever. And anamorphic.
Which it doesn't have like any of the ones in between. Like what are the other common ones? Like 1.6?
So it only has 2.0?
And 1.3, I think.
Oh, man. Yeah, they're missing out on 1.5, 1.6, and 1.8.
So it has something, Well, there you go. I think the bigger thing was, I'm not like upset that we're getting updates, but I'm upset it wasn't more. And I'm upset that like, why doesn't the A7S III have these things? Like, why does it? Now there's zero excuse. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is weird because maybe it's that same wheel that picks the camera that the updates go to. They're like, which one's it going to be? The ZVE1?
Like
Who would have thought?
Seems like it. Okay.
The cheapest camera gets all the things.
So if you're curious, I just recently made a very detailed, not to try to plug our videos all the time, but a detailed video about advanced user guide for the FX3. And there are everything with the updates also in there too. So I'll leave that link down below if you want to check it out. There's some kind of big news for Canon in that they let a third-party manufacturer make an autofocus lens.
Yeah, I heard Mica, right?
Yeah, Mikey RF 85 1.4 with autofocus. I think it's great. Happy to see it. I would have liked to see Sigma get the first shot at it, but they did not.
I know. Like, I want to know, like, what is it just purely money? Is it like a brand has to pay to play? Is that what it comes down to?
I don't know, like maybe they aren't paying enough, but the other part of it, I think, is their strategy because generally camera manufacturers don't make a lot of money with bodies. They make most of their money with lenses. The bodies take a lot of R&D and they're not around for as long as the lenses. So I think they're just trying to sell as many lenses as possible. That's my guess.
So weird.
I
do enjoy a good 85 1.4.
Well, now you can get a Mikey one for your RF cameras.
Yeah, I'll probably pass.
Yeah. Okay. Well, some Leica stuff coming out. You have the M11 monochrome, which you're probably excited to see, right?
Yeah, that's a tempting camera for sure. Okay. I know that's not for everybody, but as you know, I like the fringe stuff.
Yep. And the Summilux 51.4 as well. So that's a pretty deadly combo. Probably costs you as much as a car. So
yeah, I think that would put you at around $15,000 for those two things.
And no color.
No color.
No color.
15 grand for no autofocus, no stabilization, no weather sealing, and just black and white.
Right. Nikon came out with a new Z-mount 12 to 28 variable aperture power zoom APS-C lens for $359.
It exists.
So it's cool because that's a great lens for their like Z30. Like the small vlogging camera. It's like a wide angle lens. Canon doesn't have that.
Yeah, that's like that's the full potential vlogger, I think.
No, that would be the full frame Sony one, you know? I like to see this lens because Canon needs to come out with some wide angle RF lenses for APS-C, you know, and Nikon's doing it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
There was a small C70 firmware update that came out, and the reason I'm bringing this up is my buddy had this actual problem with his camera. There's like an issue with the control ring on the adapter. Like he has an EFR one with the control ring on it, and it was like bugging out his camera, and he like complained to Canon, and look, like they came out with a fix a few months later, so that's good that they're fixing that stuff. Yep.
Nice work.
Few new.
I'm telling you, each of one of these companies, they only hand it off to like Gary. You know, they're like, Gary, did it work? And he's like, yeah, sure. And they're like, send it, send the update.
We have a few rumored cameras, the latest batch of rumors cameras from Sony Alpha Rumors. So we'll just throw these out there. Again, no idea if any of these are true. There's a high-end APS-C camera likely before summer with the same 26 megapixel sensor from the FX30. This one, I'll be really curious about what price it comes in at. I'm assuming it'll have an EVF, but I was hoping there'd be a different sensor than that 26 one, so we'll see. A93, which has been rumored for forever, so we'll see. The A7C Mark II, which in my guessing would be an A7 IV in a smaller body. Again, I'd love to see the price under $2,000. We'll have to see about that. There is a surprise E-mount camera. No idea what that means.
Aren't all their cameras E-mount?
Yeah, that's true.
Am I missing something? Did they sneak a mount in somewhere?
Unless it's like a fixed lens. I don't know.
Oh, yeah. Okay, whatever.
I guess. Yeah. Some sort of cine or video-centric E-mount camera could come in late spring. So nothing really surprising other than those two that we have no idea about.
Hopefully it's the FX3 Mark II.
Yeah, I don't think that one's coming, dude. I don't think so. But that would be really, really cool.
Get on the ball, Sony.
So Canon's got a big lens coming out. It's an RF 100 to 300 f2.8L. So
ooh, that would be a beefy boy.
So it's coming in just under $10,000, but that would be really cool for the people that need that. That's a really cool lens. Super expensive. I mean, it's up there with like their, you know, the 400 f2.8 and 600 f4 lens, you know, that kind of stuff. There's also a rumor about Sony 70 to 200 f4, which they already have one, but it came out in like 2013. So this would be lighter, smaller, and also have macro. So that would be awesome if they came out with that.
Cool.
Yeah, that one. That
right on.
lens is still a phenomenal lens, but could definitely use an update. All right, so that's what I had for news and rumors. I'm sure there are some more. There was a lot going on in the last 2 weeks, but a lot of it was associated with NAB. So let's talk about NAB first of all. Brent,
let's do it.
So I want to talk about like our experience because I think a lot of people haven't gone or curious about what it's like, and then we'll talk about some of the gear and stuff that we saw and some of the things that we learned from the experience. So first of all, Brandon, like let's first talk about what is NAB because I didn't really, I mean, I kind of knew before we went, but like it's a little, I don't know. NAB stands for the National Association of Broadcasters. It's a conference that happens once a year in Las Vegas. It's like 4 or 5 days long. It's really geared towards broadcasting. So it's not like a YouTube conference. Like we were like 0.1%.
We're the 1%.
We were like less than 1%.
We're even 1%.
I know.
Yeah.
And as we were walking in, I'm thinking, wait, Brandon, like how much, like we're like nothing here because everyone's wearing like sport coats and stuff when we're rolling in with like, YouTubers,
T-shirt and jeans.
Jeans running around with cameras in our faces and stuff. So, although I didn't really do any vlogging. Anything else you want to add to that? Like, what's the basis of NAB?
Nah, I mean, that's pretty much it. It's crazy because it's not like just a U.S. thing. I mean, there are people from all over the world that come to this. And since you weren't there last year, I'll kind of give you like the difference. So it's held at the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is one of the biggest convention centers in the world. Every year, that's where I do Jiu-Jitsu World Champs for Masters. And last year, NAB occupied the main hall. And I would probably say, well, I don't want to give an estimate as to how many people. But it was pretty busy, pretty good energy. This year, all 3 halls of NAB were occupied, or all 3 halls of the convention center were occupied by NAB. There were so many people. The energy was way better than last year. And I didn't even make it through all 3 halls. We were there for 3 days and I got through 2 halls.
There was a third one?
So Yeah. Yeah, exactly. We missed an entire hall.
Okay.
So a bunch of these brands pay so much money. I heard like Canon's booth was like $5 million, but they bring in all of their stuff, so you'll see software, like hard drives. Like the biggest thing there this year was definitely, there were two, like, what do they call that? Not catchphrases, but the buzzwords, two buzzwords: AI, virtual production. Those were the two massive like themes throughout the entire thing.
Okay. So just so people know, it's not for YouTubers. It's for like broadcasting and sports and news and movie production and like, it's like much bigger stuff than the normal stuff that we talk about. But all of the stuff that we talk about and use is also there. It's just like a small percentage of what's going on there. So I think I want to start with talking about sort of our experience and how it went for us. Even a lot of our experiences was before the actual conference because we went a little bit early. So the conference is still going on as of recording, or it's today's the last day, I believe, as recording this.
Today's last day.
Okay, so it was running from Sunday through Wednesday, and well, Saturday was like a press day or whatever. But we got in on Friday, and we rented a place with Tyler Edwards and Matthew O'Brien and me and you, and it was great because we got in on Friday. We got to like go get some food, and then Saturday, if you want to explain like some of the craziness that happened.
We got up super early, like 4:45, 4:30 a.m. And we drove to Red Rocks National Park, which was pretty great.
Josh.
And as we were pulling in, I noticed, we're a little low on gas. And somebody was like, well, the gas light hasn't come on, so I think we're good. And then the gas light came on. And the loop is like 13 miles. And then it was 13 miles to the next gas station. And the loop is a one-way, so I couldn't like back out and like go through. So we kind of just chanced it. We went and did an early morning like time lapse. We were waiting for Becky and Chris to land their helicopter next to us because there was like a helipad out in the middle of nowhere for some reason. So we did that, and then we just kind of drove around. But thankfully, we found a gas station, and then I took you guys to my favorite donut shop in Vegas, Pink Box Donuts. They were pretty good, right, Josh?
Yeah, I ate a little bit too many donuts. Like, I'm not opposed to eating donuts, but like I definitely ate too many.
Yeah.
But Red Rocks
Got some great photos of Josh eating donuts.
There was one bench and there was like no seats left, so I'm sitting there like on the corner of a pillar, like pounding donuts. Yeah, that place is nuts. They have the craziest donuts. But I thought Red Rocks was awesome. It was absolutely stunning. I was the slowpoke in the group getting up that early. I'm not so great in the morning, but I rallied. And
yeah, Josh, when I woke him up, I was like, Josh, it's time. Josh told me the night before, he's like, make sure you wake me up. And I'm a super early riser, so I knock on his door like 15 minutes before we go. I'm like, Josh, it's time to get up.
It's just a groan,
he's
right?
in bed. He's like, oh.
I got up. I made it. I made it. So it was beautiful. I really missed the mountains after living out west in Colorado for a while ago. So it was really pretty, and it was a cool experience. So after donuts, we headed to the Hoover Dam, which we couldn't find it for a while, but we found it.
I missed the turn somehow.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not sure.
It was cool. I've been there before, almost 20 years ago, so it was fun to go back. And it was cool to be there. The weather was like absolutely perfect. Like it was not hot. It was nice and sunny. Like we had a great time.
4 words to describe the Hoover Dam.
Large. Old. Touristy. And I don't know, fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it was nice. I don't think Tyler or Matthew had been to either Vegas or the Hoover Dam. So that whole thing for them was all pretty new and pretty crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And the
what
rest
did we do after the Hoover Dam? Did we just
we chilled for a while, and then we went out for dinner.
That's right.
So
we went to Holstein's.
Yeah, so that was cool. Fancy burgers. We did not go for the milkshakes, but it was fun. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of going to Las Vegas, but hanging out with friends and getting to experience that with everybody else and walk around the strip and seeing all the crazy fountains and lights and people on the street and stuff. So I don't know. So we didn't want to stay out too late because we had a big day on Sunday. We were going to do one day at the conference, and in retrospect, I wish I'd stayed for more time because I know, like, I was going off your lead. I'm mainly Brandon saying, like, because you went last year and it wasn't as big of a deal, but like, I
Yeah,
plan to come
I
back
felt
after one day. So yeah, go ahead.
well. No, I felt really bad because last year I think I did the whole thing in maybe 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
And then you spend
Okay.
the rest of the time just trying to hobnob. So I was like, there's no way we're gonna need more than a day. And then of course it's like 3 times the size. There's like 100,000 people there, and even that first day, we didn't get through. I think the entire hall, the only one hall. So yeah, looking back, I was like, crap, that was shitty advice. But next year, Josh, next year.
Yeah, I would like to go back, and I think I'd probably like to spend at least 2 days, maybe 3 days on the floor, because it's not just the vendors and all the booths that are set up, but like the people you talk to and the conversations were as valuable, if not more valuable, than talking to brands and figuring out what they have that's new and stuff like that. And I think that was a huge part of it for me, and that's one of the main reasons I wanted to go. Is I wanted to meet a lot of other creators and a lot of people in the industry, not necessarily to network with brands and stuff, which I did some of, but like I got to meet so many cool people, and I don't want to like name names because I'm going to forget people and then I'd feel bad about it. But you know, it was just a lot of people were there, and it was really cool to hang out with them and meet them in person. And had some great conversations too. I mean, not just like between the four of us that were staying together and kind of hanging out, but also all the people we ran into there and then going out afterwards and stuff like that.
It's definitely, I mean, for me, it's the most valuable part, as we've talked about on this podcast before. Like YouTube is a weird, lonely job, and you don't really get to meet people that do this full time or even part time very often or take it seriously. So even though like the YouTubers at NAB are the 1% of the 1%, there were a lot this year, far more than there were last year, and it was really fun getting to talk to people and connect and just put, you know, faces to names. And like you said, those conversations were probably the best part about it.
Yeah, and I think those connections with people that you have talked to online but never had a chance to actually hang out with in person, it just makes everything so much better, because then when you reach out to them and you're talking later, you're like, we've connected, we know each other a little bit better. Also,
Yeah.
it's cool to talk to people that maybe you've just watched on YouTube and have never really
Yeah.
interacted with, and you're like, I'm talking to that person, that's super cool. Like, they're just a normal dude. I mean, I expect all these people to be normal, but
Yeah.
really, really cool. That's all I have to say. It was a lot of fun to get to chat with people.
That was good having you guys there.
Yeah. All right. So I'm sure more of this will come up through this conversation, but I want to talk about some of the stuff that we saw at NAB, because I think, first of all, I want to preface this to say that most of NAB has nothing to do with the stuff that we talk about on a regular
Yeah.
basis. There are
It's
brands.
the gear we like is a very small portion of what is at NAB.
Yeah.
Because Josh and I, even if we were into video production, we couldn't buy like a, you know, like one of those $200,000 like virtual production sets.
Yeah, and a lot of the smaller booths, especially, or even some of the larger ones, I had never even heard of these companies, and they're like, you know, huge products and huge, you know, part of the industry. And like, I just don't live in the broadcasting world, so I don't know what most of that stuff is. So yeah, so we'll talk about some of our takeaways from it. So we can't cover everything because we obviously didn't get to see everything, and the other part is like we're not covering. Although if you're watching this, you probably don't care about that stuff either. So, all right, so let's start with some of the big ones. Let's start with Canon. Canon was a huge letdown as far as I'm concerned. They had one new release, which was a CNE 14-35 T1.7 lens, which is $22,000.
Was that the weird reverse focal reducer lens?
Yeah, you can like set up to work on Super 35 or full frame, and there's like adapters they sell for it, but it's $22,000.
You put on full frame camera.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it turns your sensor into a full frame.
Okay.
Some crazy technology.
So it's different than a focal reducer?
Huh?
It's different than a focal reducer then?
Yeah, it's very different.
But they kind of do the same thing?
Yes, just like the same concept.
Okay.
Yeah.
But just the way it works is different.
Yes.
So how does it work?
Yeah.
It was like
Okay.
it was like in a glass box, like you couldn't even touch it. Like it was. But we had some good conversations in there with Canon people and also just people hanging out there as well. The one thing was, of course, the letdown was that there's no new cameras, and I think a lot of us were watching the rumors and hoping that we'd see like a C200 Mark II, a C700 Mark II, like stuff like that. Nothing.
Yeah, you talked to a Canon guy, and you guys kind of sneaky prepped him. You were like, "So what's coming up?" You know, I
Yes.
don't remember the exact conversation. You can.
Yeah, so
say
it was Matthew O'Brien and I were talking to this Canon sales guy, and we were talking about the lens. Obviously, Matthew and I were just like, I don't know, what am I going to talk to this guy about this lens for, you know? And then Matthew's like, so is that an RF mount? The guy's like, yeah. And then he's like, so there aren't really that many RF cinema cameras. And he's like, no, not really. I was like, are we going to get another one? Are we going to get a new, RF cinema camera this year? The guy's like, nope.
Yeah, just no.
Nope. But then
You're
later
like,
I found
okay.
out that he hasn't worked there that long, and maybe he doesn't.
Yeah,
get
he had been working there for a week.
So I don't know how accurate that is, but he did work for Canon, and he told me that. So I was there. So it
Yeah,
just I think
I was gonna say I do remember him when he was talking to me, because I had my Komodo. He was talking to me about the Komodo when he was talking to you guys. He did mention that something new could come out at the very end of the year if anything was to come out. He was like, if anything comes out, it's going to be at the very end of the year.
Yeah, you had some interesting conversations with him about the R5C and stuff too. I remember,
Yeah,
but I
that
think
was
this
good.
definitely goes along with the fact that we just saw this huge uniformed update for all of their current cinema cameras that we talked about last time for C70, C300 Mark III, C500 Mark II, and the R5C, all getting big updates as this sort of unified, we're updating our camera strategy. So it's not a surprise that we didn't see anything there. Just kind of a bummer. I didn't really even talk to the mirrorless hybrid side of it. That was like in the back. I just was talking to the cinema guys the whole time. So did you check out any of that stuff, Brandon, when you're in Canon?
No, I mean, I probably should have to go check out the R8, but I wanted to see what they were coming out with, and I was hoping, for that like C200 Mark II or the little box camera, the rumored box camera, but nothing. And he didn't seem like he was like being sneaky or lying or tried to hide anything. Like his super immediate response was like, no, maybe at the end of the year, but.
Yeah, and talking with some of the other people, I can't even drop names because I don't even remember the names. He was saying, I think they know that the C70 is such a good camera for them, and so they're just kind of building off that a little bit more. I also, now that I know that there's no more cameras coming out for the immediate future, I think about their lineup a lot is like the R5C and the C70. They've pretty much added almost everything to the C70 that the C300 Mark III has, minus like SDI and a couple other things. Like, it's kind of hard to justify the C300 Mark III for a lot of people. I mean, it's a different form factor and stuff. And now you have the R5C just a little bit cheaper. Like, if they dropped another camera, where would they put it in terms of
Where would it
prices?
fit in?
You know what I mean?
Now that you bring up the R5C, I do remember a very particular part of that conversation where it was like, are we getting anything new? And he was like, no, we're leaning on the R5C hard. Like, they are like, I mean, Griffin Conway even talked about he did a presentation on the R5C, like how great it was, and not that he was like wrong or anything like that. It's just, that's what Canon was basically saying. Like, this is our big camera. We're going to lean on it for a really long time.
Yeah, they're kind of putting their stakes down and saying, like, this is what we have. We're gonna support it as best as possible. And I think, thinking back more about the R5C, releasing that camera kind of put Canon in a tough spot, because they can't really release a $4,000 video focus camera now because they already have the R5C. Mm-hmm. And then if they release the C200 Mark II, that's going to be the C300 Mark III essentially. And then what do they price that at? $6,000, $7,000? Do they lower the price of both of those cameras? I think their lineup right now doesn't have a lot of wiggle room to add in other cameras.
I think you're right.
So I don't know if that's why they didn't come up with another camera, or they're just like, hey, our stuff's pretty good, we're just going to lean on it for now. Yeah. I don't know. Anyways.
The other thing I was super disappointed in, I wanted to see the C200 Mark II. I thought, hey, maybe. But more so disappointing for me was the lack of lens announcements. Like, there was nothing. And I'm like, dang, like, can we have some more primes? Can we get some more lenses? Nothing. Yeah. So Canon, you get a D-.
Still looking for that RF24, RF30L. We're looking for those lenses still. Let's keep asking for them. It was really cool. I said I wasn't gonna say names, but you already mentioned Griffin. It was really cool. If you don't know Griffin Conway, big shout out to Griff. Awesome dude.
Griffin's the man.
Go check out his channel. He's got great content mostly about Canon cinema cameras and filmmaking and stuff, and he's out of LA, so it was really cool to get to hang out with him. I've known him for years, and it was cool to see him do a presentation. He was ripping on Canon during the presentation, which was hilarious.
It was hilarious, yeah.
and he's paid by Canon. Like he's he's
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's
so-
a Canon guy, and he ripped on Canon. It was fun.
It was funny for sure. I think you got some good photos of that, right? As well, you're taking
Yeah,
pictures.
yeah.
All right, cool.
I'll sprinkle all those in throughout this video.
I figured. Anyways, it was really cool to get to hang out with him. I think a theme before we move on to the next one. I think a lot of the theme you start to see throughout this discussion is that there really aren't a lot of new products that are coming to NAB, and I think the reality is that's not going to happen in the future. I think people will companies release products when it makes sense for them to do it in their own marketing, because so much is virtual now that they can have a bigger announcement not doing it in person, and they can release it on their own time. So maybe that's true for the future. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, maybe it's just weird because NAB used to be the place where people dropped big products. That was like a big product announcement showcase. The other part that I thought was interesting was just the sheer lack of marketing people that were there. It was almost just salespeople there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Yeah, I noticed that some of the companies, I mean, I wasn't like trying to connect with Canon and Sony so much as some of the smaller companies, but some of them either be like 10 salespeople, and then I was like, can I talk to the marketing person? If and there'd be like one person, I have to wait and talk to them or whatever. So yeah, it was mostly salespeople there. So let's get on talking about Sony, because the Canon and the Sony booth was like insane. Like, I don't know, you told me a number for Canon was like $5 million. Like, I think Sony it was like over in the corner. It was massive. It was like really
It's pitch black.
really like crazy lit, and all the Japanese dudes are wearing suits, like, and us scrubs walk in there. Like, I just felt like it was like, what's going on in here? It was very, very hardcore, like really well done in there. I got to play with the Venice 2, so I can't say I haven't touched that camera anymore because.
Yeah.
And I look over, I was like, Brandon, what's this lens? And you're like, oh, it's the Summilux Cine lens. And I was like, it's like this big, and you're like, it's $15,000. I'm like, okay. The Venice 2 is heavy. That's all I have to say. They had the detached.
It's a big two.
They had the detached thing.
I can't remember what the detachment is called, but I remember David Manning like picked it up, and he was like, "How much is this?" I was like, $100,000. And he walks over to the rep, and he was like, "What am I holding right now?" He's like, "About $100,000." He's like, puts it down.
I picked it up. I played with it. I like very carefully put it down and walked away.
Yeah.
So I could say I've touched the Venice 2 now. I've been in the same room with it. All right. So yeah, if you don't know, they have a lot of the bigger cameras set up, and they have like a scene. It's like actors and it's all like, well lit, and you can like practice using the cameras and check them out and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So just to kind of put it in context, Josh kind of breezed over it. It's actually pretty cool. So they have this massive set with it's like maybe 3 different sets. It's probably like 80 feet long, and they have tons of cameras like the FX3, the FX6, FX9, the Venice, and they're pointing them at people that are in the scene, and you can move them around, and you can see the real time like displays going on, and so you can just see how different cameras with different lenses interact. It's pretty rad. They have it at the Canon one too.
Yeah, Canon had one that was like a couple people sitting around, then they had like a band was playing, and they had that sort of lit differently.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to be able to do that, and you get to like play with cameras you'd never get to, and they're just there. Anyone can play with them.
Yep.
Did Sony announce anything at this? Like, I don't think they had anything that was new.
I don't think they did any announcement. They had the ZVE one, and then they had that crazy like holograph booth. So you remember that?
Oh,
like,
yeah, I
they
didn't
had
check that
big
out.
Cage filled
Yeah.
with like 100 cameras, and they were doing like mapping of people's like bodies, and they could turn it into like a holographic image and stuff. It was
Did you
pretty
get
rad.
in there? Did you get in there? And...
I did not.
Okay, I
it was a
didn't
little
either.
claustrophobic for me, and I don't know. I just felt weird. I was like, yeah, let me get in here, and then it was like, oh yeah, you're out of shape. We mapped your belly. It's like, oh.
Oh, I had too many donuts yesterday. All right, so I did get to see the ZV-1 in person, so it was basically what I expected. It's pretty small, pretty lightweight, very kind of plasticky
Yeah, very
feeling.
tiny.
Very tiny. I tried to ask the guy there a bunch of technical questions. He kind of knew the answers. Still have some question marks about that camera because I don't have it, We also got to see the Air Peak, which I've never seen in person before. It's huge.
It's a big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very big. That's the drone that carries a camera. So I never got to see one of those. That was pretty cool. Anything else from Sony that you wanted to talk about?
Was there anything else that I wanted to talk about? No.
Okay.
Nah, I mean, like Josh said, all of it was a little underwhelming on the release side.
Agreed.
But that's okay.
So speaking
We'll get to some cool releases, though.
Okay, so speaking of underwhelming, let's talk about Black Magic.
Yeah.
You set me up for that one. I think a
Yeah.
lot of us were hoping for a big release from Blackmagic because in the past they've had big releases at NAB. They're much more broadcaster focused. It made more sense. They came out with like all right, so we'll go through them. Resolve got a partial update, so 18.5.
Yeah, 18.5.
The main thing there was they're having caption support, sort of like add captions automatically, which is a great feature. But
Yeah.
that was the big announcement for Resolve. We didn't get 19. We didn't get anything like that. The Blackmagic Pocket Cinema 6, you know that camera, the 6K.
The 6K Pro?
Yeah, yeah.
6K?
Now when you flip it to do vertical, the on-screen display makes it vertical so you can see the things on the screen.
Yeah.
That's the equivalent. That's the equivalent of the automatic
400 megapixel.
or the level on the Canon update.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that happened, and then they did release a new camera. Well, a new version of a camera, the Ursa Mini Pro 12K. They added an optical low pass filter to a new version that you can buy. I think there was a couple other things with switchers and stuff. That was the main.
sure.
Yeah. So that was it from Blackmagic. So big disappointed there.
Yeah.
So did Red come out with anything? I know they came out with the releases
Red-
recently, but not
Yeah.
at NAB, right?
Yeah, it wasn't at NAB. I want to say maybe a month or two ago, they came out with Red Connect, which is that crazy 8K, 120 frames a second live stream module. But you can do 8K, 120 frames a second, but up to 180 streams simultaneously, which doesn't make any sense. We were talking to Philip Grossman, who does a bunch of crazy stuff overseas, like Chernobyl and everything. And he was talking about how like FIFA uses almost 100 cams for one match. And so now they can do it all in like 8K, and just that was pretty crazy.
And the Komodo monochrome, but that came out a little while ago, right?
Yeah, that's like a made to order thing.
Okay.
Scott Balcom was there and he had it, but I guess his actually is a full spectrum conversion, which is even more wackadoodle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I did not even see where the Fuji booth was. Did you see that? Or?
Yeah, so the
Okay.
Fuji booth, if I remember right, was right next to the DJI booth. But
Okay.
it was kind of confusing because the front of their booth was actually like raised.
Oh, yeah,
There were,
now
like,
I remember that.
people
Yep.
up here, and then they had the side by side. The model just had to sit in a side by side all day. I asked her, I was like, "How long do you have to do this for?" She was like, "Today, 9 hours." I was like, "Just sit in a side by side all day." Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess I did walk by that. I forgot I didn't go check it out. So and then we did walk by Nikon just enough for you to like snap a photo.
Yep. I was like, Josh, I need to get a photo of me doing this and then saying it exists.
So yeah, Nikon exists. Yeah, I didn't even talk to them or look at what they had, but they were there. There was every time I walked by
They were
there
there.
was nobody was talking to them. Like their booth was empty. So.
Pretty much.
Okay, Aperture released a couple new products. They have the Amaran 150C and 300C. Those are now full color, full RGB COB lights.
I'm so excited for these, actually.
Okay, you have a use for them?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I would find a use for these, for sure. Nanlite came out with the Forza 60C, and I was like, this is really cool, but it's only 60 watts, and it was $700. So the fact that Aperture came out with an RGB WW at 150 watts and 300 watts that are less than the 60C is incredibly impressive. I think the 300C is like what, 549?
Something like that, yeah.
579? Dude, that's amazing. So yeah, Aperture, that's probably my favorite release of the whole thing, and it was like a total surprise.
Yeah.
Tyler was like, I need this. Oh my God.
Brandon Washington was really excited.
Oh yeah. He was like, no, I need it. I need this. I was like, you really want one? No, I need it.
One of these right now.
No, this is something I actually need.
Yeah. So it's really cool to see them developing the Amaran line. If you guys don't know what that is, Aperture, it's one of the brands under Aperture, and it's their more budget-focused line. It's not as, they're not built as well. It's the same level as their Aperture products. They're not as professional, but They're great for guys like us, like YouTubers or lower level production stuff where it's not going to get beat up as much, or in studio stuff where you're not moving things often. So really cool. There's a couple other products that the Amaran line coming out with. One is the Spotlight SE, which I would probably pick up because I've wanted to get one of those and start playing with gobos. I know you love them, but which you can always see.
That is what makes this.
Yep. I've wanted to have one for a while, but like the Aperture one's pretty pricey, and I didn't really want to get one of the more budget ones. So that might be a great option for me. And with that 150C, that would be pretty cool, man. You could probably do some nice stuff, fun stuff with that.
Oh yeah, yeah. You can do some really cool like sunrise, sunset looking things if you wanted.
Yep. And then they also have the Light Dome Mini SE. So I actually have their Light Dome SE, which is like their full size one, but it's smaller than the like regular Light Dome 2. It's like a little bit cheaper. So
yeah.
I don't know what the price is going to be on that, but it's cool to see now they have 2 options for the minis. So that's cool.
Did they have a price on the Spotlight, the projector?
I didn't see it. I should have looked it up before we
Okay.
recorded this. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I didn't get the prices on those.
I definitely will be getting one. Probably
Okay.
the 300.
Wow. Okay,
So-
sweet. I think the biggest thing at Aperture was getting to meet and hang out with Ted. That was like super
Yeah.
fun. So if you
Yeah.
don't know Ted, he's like the head of Aperture, and he's like the nicest, funniest, outgoing guy ever.
He
Everyone
was.
loves Ted.
Lots of energy. He could power a small moon if he needed to.
He also was like drinking coffee continuously while we were talking to him. So that was awesome. All right, so let's get on to talking about DJI. And I think their big release was the Inspire 3, which is priced at $16,500. It'll do 8K Cinema DNG at 25 frames per second. It also ProRes RAW up to 75 frames per second. So this is their big professional drone. That was their big release. Their booth was pretty nuts. They had a lot going on there. I got to play with
They did
the like
have a lot going on.
remote control gimbal thing.
Yeah, we played with the
I should have played with the chicken head. I forgot to play with that camera.
yeah, we didn't play with the 4D, but we played with the wireless transmitter.
That's what that was. Yeah, and it was crazy because some guy was walking around with a gimbal, and we could control the focus and panning and tilting remotely.
Pretty nuts.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it was really cool.
It was really cool. Anything else from that booth that stood out?
No, I just love how they put the Inspire 3 in like a timeout. They had like that room that had like the wires so it couldn't go anywhere. I imagine it's so nobody could steal it because last year at NAB, a ton of stuff got stolen. So people were very much
crazy.
like, all right, we got to practice. Yeah, I guess last year somebody walked up to the Tilta booth, grabbed a red Raptor, put it in a backpack, and just walked out. So,
Man, I do want to mention something that I guess was released at NAB, but I didn't actually see it till I got home. Angelbird came out with a new card, and I know it's like maybe not be a big deal to talk about a new memory card, but this one is a really big deal. So they have a CF Express Type A card. So those are the ones for Sony that were proprietary.
they're super expensive.
Until recently. They're very expensive. ProGrade makes one, but it's not that much cheaper. And Sony makes a couple higher ones, but the most common size is the 160 gigabyte card, which is $350, which I have one of just so I can test things, right? I just use SD cards for everything.
Yeah.
But the 1 terabyte card from Angelbird is going to be $500.
Whoa.
So 160 gigs
Dang.
for $350 from Sony, 1 terabyte for $500. So that's
Dang.
a game changer in the Sony world for sure. So Angelbird's been coming out with some really cheap cards. I know like their CF Express Type B cards are super cheap. Like they make that
Are
whole
they
thing.
doing any sizes other than 1 terabyte?
That's the only one I saw. So I don't know.
Okay.
They're also coming out with a reader, so that's cool too.
Alrighty.
All right, so Tilta, I didn't see this at the show. I forgot to check this out, but their new Nucleus Nano 2 wireless follow focus.
Cool.
Cool. I mean, the version 1 everyone loves and uses, so I don't know.
Here's another sponsor we won't get. I have a Tilta Nucleus Nano. It's sketchy as hell. Tilta make really cool products that just don't work.
Okay, good to
Straight
know.
up.
Good to know. I've heard good
Their
things about that.
electronics always crap out.
Okay, I've heard good things about it, so good to know that you have not had the experience. Sennheiser has a new wireless system that looks really cool.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, and it like stacks up together, and it looks really, really cool. I got a
didn't
little bit
see
of
it.
information about it, but that was their new release. And continuing with audio, Deity, always coming out with cool stuff. They had a standalone small recorder that had 32-bit float.
Yeah.
You just put on somebody, plug a lav in, hit record, good to go. And then they also had a new 2-channel wireless system that also has internal recording in the transmitters with 32-bit float again. Their products
Okay.
like feel so good in the hands. They're metal, they're sturdy. Like,
Yeah. Aren't they also owned by Aperture?
I think they were either they were originally or they still are. I'm not sure, but they didn't come
okay.
out of Aperture, so I don't know if it's separate or not.
Gotcha. Yeah, they make good stuff. That's for sure.
They do for sure. I'm hoping to try to test some of their stuff out. So there's a lot of cool lenses and stuff too, Brand. I think this is more your world, but DuLens was there, which I wanted to check out, and I was over there, and I saw Cam over there checking out lenses. So
Yeah, it was good to meet Cam,
Yep.
and yeah, he was all over the APO micro primes. They just came out with like an APO micro prime, but like a new vintage type of coating, and they looked really good. But all of their monitors were really small, so it was like really tough to see like
Gotcha.
what the characteristics of those lenses actually were. But they looked fabulous.
I just heard about that company a few months ago, and I was like blown away with their lenses. I know they're kind of hard to get, and they're in weird sizes or weird focal lengths, but they have a lot of vintage character to them, but they're brand new. So
And they're very tiny. We're talking like this big.
that's cool. Okay, like I think like the flaring is like they make rainbows and stuff. Like it's pretty funky.
Yeah, they had an 85 and I was trying to test it. And like I said, the monitor was so darn small, but it didn't have a lot of focus breathing. It looked really, really nice. It had a lot of like 3D pop to it, which was cool. But and their booth was also really tiny. So if you get 5 or 6 people, you just kind of feel cramped. You're like, oh, I don't want to like butt in here and start messing around with stuff. But
Cool. I got to chat with the people at Nisi for a while. I love their filters. I use their ND filters all the time, and hopefully I'll get to try out some of their stuff in the future. I connected with them, but one thing is their new lens set that's coming out soon. I think it's coming out in the summer. So it's
was
the
that the
Athenas.
Athena
Yeah.
or something?
Yeah. So these are all full frame cine lenses. They're going to be 14, 25, 35, 50, and 85. And they're all similar size and weight, so they match up really well for gimbal work and stuff like that. The neat thing is they're coming out in RF, E, and PL. And the RF and E lenses will have a spot for a filter inside the lens, like close to the flange.
Yeah. I thought that was rad. So you've got like that Canon drop-in filter. This one's just built right into the lens.
Yeah, so ND, probably circular polarizer, mist filter, probably all their normal. And they, in my opinion, they make some of the best filters out there. So I'd be psyched to see what they can do for lenses as well.
Yeah.
DZO, you got to check out their stuff, right?
I had heard that they had come out with like a new budget 2x anamorphic, so that was like at the top of my list. Sure enough, they've got some Super 35 2x squeeze. The interesting thing is the close focus distance is exceptional, and they're making very wide focal lengths, which a lot of people don't do. So they had like a 16, a 20, a 24, a 28. I can't remember the other focal lengths, but it went all the way up to an 80. They couldn't give me a price on anything, but I heard they're going to be around like $4,000. I don't know when they're being released, but they felt great. They looked great. I would totally pick up a set of these if they are what they say they are. For how much?
So they don't have any anamorphics before this, right? They're just cinema lenses?
I don't believe so. Yeah, they make great glass, though. A lot of people really like them.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good stuff about their primes. Also, their zooms are pretty cool, too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool. It seems like there's a lot more people pushing into the sort of more budget anamorphic lenses and making it more accessible to people. So that's really cool.
Yeah. One thing I regret, though, Josh, when we were there, because Micah was there.
They were, yeah.
And I bet they had that RF 85 there. And I was like, oh, you idiot. When I saw the announcement for that, I was like, I was right there. I could have seen it. But
I saw the booth from afar, and there was like no one over there, and I was like, they must not have anything going on because like no one was over there checking things out. So, all right. I can't think of anything else, Brandon, but anything else that stood out to you from the gear and sort of the announcements and all that kind of stuff from just walking around?
Yeah, Condor Blue had some really cool stuff, actually. Condor Blue had a really interesting top handle. Did you see the top handle?
With the memory in it?
It was like the first day. Yeah, it had like a built-in SSD, but it's not something that they built. They partnered up, I think, with SanDisk to make it. So it's like a viable solution, but it had run stop on it. We got to talk to the engineer of Condor Blue, Brandon, about it, which was really cool. So they had some really interesting products. But as far as like big releases, really for me, it was the aperture stuff, the 150 and the 300C, Dezio's anamorphic lens. But that was it. It felt like more of a letdown than like really cool drops.
But that didn't really, in my opinion, take away from the experience at all.
It didn't at all. Yeah, not one bit.
Absolutely. So overall, we had a great time. I would recommend, if you can make it happen, I would recommend going in the future for the experience of networking and just hanging out with new friends and getting to meet people. And it's really cool because everyone's there to nerd out, and so like it doesn't feel awkward to like get nerdy about things, or you know, all the YouTubers are doing this sort of same thing. They pull out a camera like no one cares. Like it's, you know,
you won't feel out of place if you're vlogging. Like there was lots of people vlogging. You know, Dave Mays or Dave Altizer did the sorry, Dave. Dave did his well, I just know him as Dave Mays. It's been kind of an adjustment.
Yeah.
It's Altizer, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yep.
So he did his big thing in and out. There were like 50 people that showed up. They were all YouTubers that showed up. So that was a lot of fun. But there's tons of opportunities to meet and connect with people. And every year they send out like a free exhibits pass. So you don't actually have to pay to get in. It's free to get in. So yeah.
Yeah, everyone's very inclusive. Everyone wanted to hang out with everybody. It felt like felt like a good experience all around for sure. Hopefully, we'll see you guys there next year, and we'll see you pretty soon with this podcast.
Peace.